Wow. Do you believe? I'm glad to be back this week, and I want to tell you a story. You see, I grew up in Colorado, and I loved horses. That was my dream, that someday I would have a horse. And my dad was a hunter. Well, he did many things, but he loved going hunting up in the hills of the mountains of Colorado. Well, he realized that what he needed if he went hunting was a horse. And so he went to an auction, bought a horse, a little quarter horse, and took her hunting. Well, she was the smartest horse in Colorado, and when they got a deer or an antelope or an elk or something like that, there was Beauty standing there, and they thought she was going to carry that carcass out of the mountains so they wouldn't have to. But she just, when they put the carcass on her back, she just merely laid down and wouldn't move. Well, she turned out not to be a very good horse for a hunter. And so Daddy said to me, I was about 10 at this time, he said, "Kay, how would you like to have a horse? This is a lovely little horse. Would you? Oh, I was absolutely thrilled. And Beauty became my constant companion whenever we would go to our little ranch up there in the mountains of Colorado. I would just hop on Beauty's back. She was a small little quarter horse, so it was easy to just hop on her back. And sometimes just with a bridle or with a halter, we would go riding through the trails of the Rocky Mountains. And I had a dream as a teenage girl, going through those beautiful mountains, that around the corner, I would come upon this gorgeous hunk of masculinity, riding this white stallion. And this man would be everything to me. It's amazing how we dream in our teenage years. Anybody had such a crazy dream like that? Come on, be truthful. You all have. And I actually dreamed about what kind of characteristics this guy was going to have. Wouldn't it be wonderful if he was not only handsome, but also if he was always there when you needed him, just loved to be with you. And I thought we could ride horses together, we could have such a marvelous time together. And then I thought, oh, it would be nice if he was also strong, so strong that he could protect me from anything. I would never have to be afraid again. He was always there, could protect me, could save me from anything. Now that was somebody to wish for. And then I thought, well, what about those times that I got discouraged and felt sad and felt that life wasn't going right for me, and I just felt so depressed. Wouldn't it be nice if this guy would just quiet me with his love, just hold me, just listen? I thought that would be amazing. But then it would be fun if he also took great delight in me. Say I made some kind of crazy mistake. Say I embarrassed myself terribly, but he still overlooked all those things that were wrong, and he just took great delight in me and thought I could do no wrong. Wow, that would really be nice. And then I went to Campion Academy. Now, at Campion Academy, when I was a junior or a senior, I remember distinctly, I can see it to this day, I was on the second floor of the dormitory, and it was just a little after supper time, and I heard this singing coming through my window. Well, I ran to see who was singing out there. I put the window up as far as I can, and I leaned over as far as and sure enough, there was this handsome guy sitting out there with his guitar and singing this beautiful song to the girl who lived on the first floor. But I thought, now wouldn't that be wonderful to have this man be able to just sing to me, to quiet me, to just I didn't care if it was a baritone bass or if it was like David singing, you know, it really didn't matter. Just to have those musical sounds coming just to me. And then I grew up and married reality. It wasn't but a number of years later that I found an amazing Bible verse. It was a 3:17 Bible verse. Now, you know some 3:16s. You know John 3:16 for, help me out, for God so gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting. Yes, you know that beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful verse. Now that's a 3:16, but the 3:17s aren't quite as well known as that. And I found this 3:17 that I had never ever read before. It was Ephesians 3:17, and it said, "May your roots go down deep into the soil of God's marvelous love, so you will know how high and how deep and how long and how wide his love is. So you will be filled up with God himself, because God is love." Now that's taken from the Living Bible, and I just thought, ooh, that's so beautiful. It's so poetic. May your roots go down deep into the soil of God's marvelous love. And then I got to thinking, whew, that's such a beautiful Bible text. I'm just wondering what all the other 3:17s in the Bible say. Now, no one except a right-brained person would ever study their Bible by just looking up the 3:17s. But I started in Genesis. That wasn't bad. I went to Exodus. Interesting. I went all the way up to Zephaniah, and I could not believe what I was reading. Zephaniah 3:17 says, "The Lord your God is always in your midst. He is mighty to save. He will quiet you with his love. He will take great delight in you, and he will rejoice over you with," help me out, with singing. Yes, he will rejoice over you with singing. I could not believe that Bible text was hidden there in the Bible. And here I'd even read through my Bible before and never found it. Zephaniah 3:17 was the answer to all my longings, wanting this perfect man who was always there and mighty to save and would quiet me with his love and rejoice over me and take great delight in me and then sing to me. Why, I had just found the answer. It was my God. And I had been searching elsewhere for so long. And as I held on to that text, it came to me that this is my Father in heaven who loves me like this. The God of the universe who owns everything. This is the God who wants to give me my heart's desire, wants to be everything to me. And then I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if every dad in this world had those 5 characteristics of God? How different life would be for the children sitting in the pews here. How different it would be for their wives who are desperate for a little extra hug once in a while, for a little bit extra, maybe even singing once in a while. If only dads had those characteristics. And then I began studying about the importance of fathers in the family. And I came away with some amazing statistics. Oh, folks, dads, you are so important. You have no idea how important you are. I think I've mentioned this before, but if not, here goes it again. If you want your children to have a high set of values, to be people of character, would it be best if dad had that kind of character, or if mom, who was always there during the early years, and if mom had that kind of a character? What would you think? I probably set you up for the answer. Yes. Well, you would think it would probably be mom. What would you think if you wanted your kid to be a vegetarian and only one parent in the family was the vegetarian? Would it be important for mom to be the vegetarian, who does probably most of the cooking, or would it be important for dad to be the vegetarian? Boy, we've got some bright child here that's answering all my questions before I get to the end. You know, thank you. Anyway, yes, it is more important for dad to be that person. Study was done at Loma Linda University in terms of Adventists. If you want your kid to be an Adventist, is it more important for dads to be the Adventist, if only one is the Adventist, or for moms to be the Adventist? Come on, kids, help me out. Dads, good for you. Dads, you've got the right answer. Dads are pretty important people, wouldn't you kids say? Now you've got to answer me really loud. Are dads important people? Yes. Dads are very important people. Now, here are some research findings. All right. Now, some of these you'll say, oh, that doesn't make too much sense. But dads who care for their babies during the first 3 months of age, they're there, they're taking care of the babies. These babies were less likely to cry when someone else came by and picked them up. Okay, now, that doesn't mean too much because all babies are different. But get this, children whose fathers help care for them are less likely to be violent. They have higher IQs, better impulse control, better social adaptations. All of the elements of mental health are better. That's pretty impressive. Here's another one. Men who have been involved in the physical care of children under the age of 3, and this is so interesting to me. So they're involved in the dressing, the diapering, the feeding, the taking care of these children under 3 years of age. Men who have been involved in the physical care of children under the age of 3 are significantly less likely to become involved in sexual abuse of children. The very intimacy of feeding, of changing diapers, and bathing seems to inoculate men against subsequent sexual arousal, not just in relation to their own children, but to all children as well. Interesting, isn't it? And how much do we allow our young boys to be involved in the physical care of kids with our families of 1, 2, and maybe 3 by the time they're 15, 16 years of age and need to be physically caring for babies to help them get through a tough time ahead, perhaps? There aren't any young children around. Generally, they're not the kids who are volunteering to take care of the children who are not necessarily in church or at another kind of program. They're not necessarily the babysitters, and yet these boys need experience caring for little ones. Another study, this comes from Yale University. Children raised solely by women had the highest crime rates as adults. Lack of closeness with parents was a common factor in later hypertension, coronary heart disease, malignant tumors, mental illness, and suicide. That's amazing. The lack of closeness with parents is so involved in not just the mental health of kids growing up, but also the physical health of kids growing up. Just amazing to me. And then finally, he found that an emotional or physically absent father contributed to a child's low motivation for achievement, inability to defer immediate gratification for later rewards, low self-esteem, and susceptibility to group influence and juvenile delinquency. All the things you don't want for your kids was correlated to lack of influence, lack of dads being there, either physically or emotionally. You see, there are a lot of dads in this world who might be there physically, but they come home and are absent psychologically. Their eyes immediately go to the mail on the table, and they pick up the mail, and without even noticing mom or the kids, they head to the study to read the mail, to pay the bills, to check their messages on email. And the kids are growing up without this presence of a dad, not just physically, but also psychologically. So, because of all these things, many, many kids feel that their fathers do not love them. Here's a testimony that is from a person who now absolutely, his whole ministry is going around saying how wonderful God the Father is and helping us understand God's characteristics. His name is Jack Frost. He's an American. And this is what he says about his teenage years. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was the voice of my stern, disapproving father saying words that I had longed to hear for so many years. Son, I love you. Everything is going to be all right. It was 1972. Because of an LSD overdose, I lay in a semi-comatose state in a hospital bed in Daytona Beach, Florida. My father was cradling me in his arms and running his fingers through my shoulder-length hair, telling me, his rebellious, misfit son, that he really loved me. This couldn't be happening, I thought to myself as I listened to the faint beeping of the medical equipment. My dad was telling me that he loved me. The same overpowering dad who 2 years earlier had shoved me to the floor in our home, grabbed a pair of scissors, and violently cut off my hippie-style hair after telling me that I was a disgrace to the family. Now he was tenderly whispering to me about love, forgiveness, and acceptance. Even though I was in a drug-induced fog, his words sank deep into my soul. Son, I love you. As a boy, I had longed for my dad's approval and affection. I just wanted him to smile at me or to say that he was proud to be my dad. Yet when I opened my heart to receive his love, I was always left empty and disappointed. I was now 19 years old. Yet I could not remember even one time in my life when my dad had held me close or said those words. As a result of the rejection I felt, I had ceased being my father's son and never wanted to see him again. Like so many men from his generation, Dad didn't know how to express affection. He was a good man and would have died for me, but to him, showing emotion was a sign of weakness. Because he had grown up during the Great Depression and lived in a fatherless home, he built up a fortress around his heart to protect him from pain. Then he went to war and learned even more survival skills. Later, he expressed his love simply by providing for the family financially and by teaching his 2 sons to survive in a merciless world. He always told me, never be weak by showing emotions or tears. Be tough, be a man. So many have grown up with a father who didn't know how to be like their Father in heaven, didn't know how to be there and to save them from being bullied by kids as they were growing up. They didn't know a father could be loving and could just hold them when their whole lives were falling apart. And they didn't know a father who could show his emotions and rejoice over them with singing. They didn't know that kind of father. But having that kind of father means everything to a kid. What is it going to take to change the fathers of the world so that they will be like God, our Father, is to us? I'd like to read you 2 stories. Unfortunately, folks, these stories are from the U.S. I didn't look in your literature to find similar stories, but hold on, they have a good meaning. Many years ago, have any of you heard of Al Capone? Oh, you know more about us than we probably know about you, okay? Here we go. Many years ago, Al Capone virtually owned Chicago. Capone wasn't famous for anything heroic. He was notorious for enmeshing the Windy City in everything from bootlegged booze and prostitution to murder. I mean, he was the head of the mafia in that area. Everybody was scared of Al Capone. He ruled. What he said went, and Al Capone had a lawyer named Easy Eddie. He was Capone's lawyer for a good reason. He was very good at what he did. In fact, with his skill, he was able to legally maneuver Al Capone and keep him out of jail for a long, long time. To show his appreciation, Al Capone gave Easy Eddie everything. I mean, he lived in a mansion with his family. It took a whole block in the city of Chicago. It was so big. And he had everything that he wanted, money-wise. He took good care of Easy Eddie. Easy Eddie lived a high life in the Chicago mob and gave little consideration to what went on around him. He was basically well taken care of by Al Capone. He was guarded. And despite his involvement with organized crime, Eddie even tried to teach his child, whom he loved dearly, his son, to be a good kid. He tried to teach him right from wrong, even in this even within the mob that he basically lived with and supported and got out of jail. He tried to be a good father. Yet, with all his wealth and influence, there were two things that he couldn't give his son. He couldn't pass on a good name or a good example. A good name or a good example. One day, Easy Eddie reached a difficult decision. He wanted to rectify the wrongs that he had done. He decided he would go to the authorities and tell the truth about Al Scarface Capone, clean up his tarnished name, and offer his son some semblance of integrity. To do this, he would have to testify against the mob, and he knew the cost would be great. But he testified regardless. Within a year, Easy Eddie's life was ended in a blaze of gunfire on some lonely Chicago street. But in his eyes, he had given his son the greatest gift that a father can offer, at the greatest price he could ever pay. Police removed from his pockets samples of, he was obviously a Catholic, the rosary, the crucifix, and a religious medallion. He had tried to turn his life around. And clipped to a magazine article, they found this poem. The clock of life is wound but once, and no man has the power to tell just when the hands will stop at late or early hour. Now is the only time you have. Live, love, toil with a will. Place no faith in time, for the clock may soon be still. In other words, now is the time for change. If you're gonna change, now is the time. Don't wait for next year. Your kids will be 1 year older. They need you now and everything that you can offer. All right, story number 2. This is about a World War II hero. His name is Lieutenant Commander Butch O'Hare. He was a fighter pilot and assigned to an aircraft carrier, Lexington, in the South Pacific. One day, his entire squadron was sent on a mission. After he was airborne, he looked at the gauge and realized that someone had failed to top off the gas for the plane flight. And he immediately realized that it was so low that if he continued with his squadron to the mission that he was sent on, that he could never get back to the carrier. And so he was told, turn around immediately, go back. He did what he was told. And as he headed back to the carrier there in the South Pacific, he came upon a squadron of Japanese fighters, Japanese fighter planes that were heading straight for his fleet, heading straight to that Air Force, the carrier where he was housed. And he realized that the carrier had no one to protect them. Every single one of their planes had gone off on this mission, and he was the only one, because he had to turn back, that saw what was going to be happening in just a few minutes. Without thinking about his life, he immediately started diving in the middle of the Japanese squadron, firing the guns on the plane's wings, and actually he learned later that he had hit and destroyed 5 of those Japanese planes. But soon he ran out of ammunition. What to do now? He was the only one who could stop this Japanese squadron from hitting his fleet there. And so he began to just dive wildly at the planes, hoping to hit a tail or hit a wing and knock them out of the sky. Finally, the Japanese squadron had had enough of this maverick. They turned around and headed in another direction. And he had just enough fuel to get back to the carrier. And as they came in, they told him, he mentioned about the Japanese, that the story was told, and the cameras on his wings recorded everything that had happened there in the sky. And that happened on February 20, 1942. And for that action, Butch became the Navy's first ace of World War II and the first naval aviator to win the Congressional Medal of Honor. A year later, Butch was killed in aerial combat at the age of only 29. His hometown would not allow the memory of this World War II hero to fade, and today, O'Hare Airport in Chicago is named in tribute for this courageous man. Have any of you ever been to the Chicago airport? You have not? Oh, you probably visit California, or you probably visit Florida, or maybe you visit Hawaii. But there between Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, if you walk through that area, is the statue of Butch O'Hare. So you say, what do these two stories have in common? Have any of you guessed yet? All right. Butch O'Hare was Easy Eddie's son. Butch O'Hare, this hero who risked everything to save his unit, to save his squadron, was the son of Easy Eddie. What if Easy Eddie hadn't turned his life around? Knowing the dangers, he knew he was going to be killed. He knew how the mob treated people who defected from them. Yet he did what his heart told him to do. Be a good example for your son. Live the kind of life that you want your son to live. And his example was found in his son, and by his son becoming a hero, let's put it that way. Anyway, there are many things that I could share with you at this point. I would just like to share a couple Bible verses. Be there. Your children need you. Protect them from negative people and negative influences. And it says in Ephesians 4:31-32, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. Ephesians 4:31-32. Oh, and then it says, and don't make your kids angry. That's also in Ephesians 6:4. Quiet them with your love. It's interesting what God says for wives to do in the Bible and for what husbands to do in the Bible. And I'm going to share with you those texts later this afternoon when we talk about the snap, crackle, and pop, how to put that back into your marriage. But quiet them with your love. Let them know that you're there to be stable when their lives are not stable. Take great delight in them. Compliment them. Show appreciation. Give physical expressions of acceptance. And you know what? Whether you can sing or not, rejoice over them with singing. It says in Colossians 3:16, teach and admonish. How? With psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. I'm not sure it really means you have to sing those hymns and sing those songs, but I think your voice needs to sound like music to your children. And it makes all the difference in the world. So, your God is an amazing God, an example for all of us, actually both mothers and fathers. Can anybody tell me now what those 5 characteristics are? You didn't know a quiz was coming at the end of the sermon, did you? What are those 5 characteristics found in Zephaniah 3:17? God is always there. He's present. That's the first one. God's always there. The time factor. Number 2, anyone remember the second one? He is, come on folks, he is mighty to save. He's strong. He will stand for us. In every situation, we can trust that God is mighty to save us. Now, he's going to, what's number 3? Okay. He's going to first quiet us with his love. And then we've got a rejoice coming. Come on, help me out. He's going to rejoice over us with singing, and he's going to take great delight in us. Actually, if you read down through that verse, you will find that first he's always there, mighty to save, will quiet us with his love, and he will take great delight in us, and he will rejoice over us with singing. Dads, that's a high order, but your kids deserve it. And one of the best things dads can do when they're there and strong and rejoicing over their family, etc., is to let the kids know that mom is the most important person in the family. She's special, and let the kids see that in the relationship. So I just want to share, come this afternoon and we'll talk more about this. But until then, God bless.